So it's been a crazy couple of weeks in our country, particularly as there is just this war over immigration. And frankly, my point or purpose of sharing a couple of thoughts has nothing to do with whether you or I ultimately believe in the immigration policies that we have in this country or don't. And my thought, or really I guess it's my struggle, is more around the observation of the way people are behaving in the midst of it. On one hand, we live in a country that is more tolerant than it has ever been. For better or worse, we talk about many things around the idea of accepting people for who they are, of loving people the way that they are, telling people to love themselves for who they are, to just be you, right? You be you. And yet, we get into an arena that is really charged up, something like immigration, particularly in this case, whether or not you believe that children should be separated from their parents when they illegally enter the country. And again, there's many, many facets to this. But what sickens me beyond maybe anything in the midst of a situation like this is just to watch the way that people treat each other. It's just disappointing to see that we are not able to step into the other person's world. That more and more, when there is an issue that comes to the forefront, we are clearly divided. There's a black side and a white side, and there are no in-betweens. There's no gray. And in an issue like this, immigration, the separation of children, and again, however you feel, there's a lot of gray. And I think that the most unloving thing that we can do is just hammer people that we disagree with. And yet it's happening over and over again. And then that causes us to just get charged up and fight and argue more. And it's the exact opposite of what we say so many other times. And all the while, and this goes back to something that I preached about a month ago, all the while we have a young generation that is watching the way that we as adults behave. We have a young generation that is sitting and watching, looking for an example. And I believe as adults in this country, the majority of us, we are just a terrible, terrible example of what it means to love one another. As a Christian, as a believer, the Bible is very clear. We are to love God and we are to love others. And I'll just speak as a Christian. I think that Christians do a terrible job of loving others when it comes to issues like this. We are so fearful of giving up our position, our quote-unquote rights, that we just do a terrible job of loving other people to the point where we are just demonstrating hate towards them. And it's got to stop. It's got to stop because that's not what we've been called to do. It's got to stop because that's not the right way to behave. It's got to stop because our kids are watching. It's got to stop because if it doesn't, we haven't even begun to see the negative ramifications of the way in which we behave. So whether it's an issue of immigration or race or gender, sexuality, I would just encourage you to think twice, to be quiet, to put yourself into somebody else's shoes, into somebody else's world, and find a way to be compassionate, to be empathetic, to be understanding, and to be loving, instead of being hurtful and ultimately, whether you mean to do so or not, hateful towards that person. I would love to hear feedback on this. Shoot me a note, shoot me a message. You can find me on social media, wherever I decide to post this, and I'd be happy to dialogue about this further. But ultimately, the way we are behaving right now, I don't believe is the right way to behave. And I know that I am just as much of a problem or a part of the problem as anybody else that may watch this.